Hello, college success students. This is your week 11, chapter 12, asynchronous lecture. Let me share my screen. We'll get right into it. Hope you're all doing well. All right, so this week we're talking about health, maintaining health, overall health in your mind, in your body, in your spirit. And this is really important. It's really important. We're talking about holistic health. Holistic meaning it encompasses everything. It's not just your physical health. It's not just eating, right? Um, it's your emotions. It's your what you're thinking about. It's your spiritual practices. It involves everything. Wellness is what leads to enjoyment in life, living life abundantly with meaning, with purpose, with energy, with joy, with happiness, fulfillment. That's what we all want in life. And the things that we do in life, the habits of our life are going to be a big part of fulfilling that purpose. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle involves our whole person. Again, our mind, our body, and our spirit. We'll talk real briefly about the mind. We're going to get into some details towards the end of this lecture, which will not be long. But the mind, we've talked about this entire course. Your mind is a powerful thing. It's a miraculous thing, the brain that you have. And if you're able to foster and develop positive ways of thinking and make that a habit in your life, an open, positive attitude, an open mindset, that's going to be foundational for your overall health and well-being in every area of your life. What can you do with that positive mindset? Well, it helps you maintain healthy habits in school, in work, in relationships, in your family, future marriage potentially. Helps you manage emotions, your attitude, the way you cope with difficulties in life. And it creates resiliency, creates stick-to-itiveness, a way to get through difficult situations through healthy practices. And we're going to talk more about that towards the end of the lesson. The body, physical health, it impacts your ability to do the things that you want to do in life. If your body's not healthy, it's going to be hard time. It's going to be hard for you to do your student practices, your family things that you need to do, your work things. If your health is not there, you really are extremely limited in what you're able to do. So creating healthy habits through exercise, diet will contribute to your overall wellness and enjoyment of life. If those things are not there, you're not going to be enjoying life very much or able to be successful in school or work. And we'll talk about some of those things later as well. Spiritual health, the spirit. Spiritual wellness gives your life meaning, direction, purpose. You can't live without those things. If you do, you're probably coping with some really unhealthy things that, again, I'll talk about towards the end of this lesson. But a life that is void, that is devoid of meaning, is really a life devoid of hope and joy. So your spiritual well-being is really, really important. We were created by God. We're not here by accident. We're not here by chance. And really, truthfully, you will only find true fulfillment, ultimate fulfillment in life. I believe you were made not just by God, but for God, to enjoy a relationship with God and with other people. That's where we find that's the sweet spot in life is enjoying relationships with God and with people. How do we maintain those relationships? How do we maintain spiritual wellness? Well, we do that through personal practices, reflection, meditation, prayer, but also engagement in community. That's where spiritual practices were made to be lived out is not just isolated on our own. We're not meant to be, individuals in an individual society. We're meant to be in community, and that's the best place to really work out your spiritual health. So, why do we need to pursue wholeness in our minds, in our bodies, in our spirit? Well, because life is hard. There's a lot of stress, hardships, trials, troubles, tribulations, you name it, we all know it. Everyone deals with stress. And it's unfortunate, but it's our reality. It's part of our human existence. And you can just plan on dealing with stress. Let's call it as it is. Every single day, you're going to have some level of stress, some level of pain, emotional, relational pain. It's going to happen every day. You're not going to go a day without, you're not going to just have this perfect day on this side of eternity. On this side of heaven, it's not going to happen. There's going to be stress. There's going to be trials that you're going to deal with. How you deal with that stress, again, goes a long way in how well your wellness, how healthy you are in terms of your wellness, and your fulfillment in life. So you can manage stress in different ways. There are healthy ways to do that, and there are unhealthy ways to do that. Um, and again, the ways that you deal with stress will in large part dictate your overall satisfaction and wellness in life. In order to effectively deal with the stress and trouble that you have in life, you need to be self-aware. You need to recognize, oh, that thing I'm dealing with right now, that my shoulders are tight, they're raised up, I'm clenching my jaw, my mind is racing, I'm starting to feel, my fists are clenched. I'm dealing with stress. You need to have that self-awareness in your body, in your mind, in your interactions with people that, oh yeah, this is stress right now. This is heightened emotions. If you don't recognize it, you won't realize how you're coping with it. And if you don't know how you're coping with it, you're probably going to be coping with it in unhealthy and negative ways. So awareness of stress, recognizing when you're stressed, what causes you to feel stressed and overwhelmed is really going to help you make better decisions with dealing with your stress so that you can choose the healthy ways to deal with that. So everyone wants to be happy. We all, happiness is an important part of life, and that's a major pursuit that we all have. And I don't think it's a bad pursuit. Some people say, "Oh no, no one deserves to be happy all the time." I think that's part of who we are as humans. We want to be happy. We want to experience pleasure in life. Um, and I personally, I believe that God created us to experience that, to experience pleasure and happiness. They're essential. Without happiness, without fulfillment, without pleasure in life, what are we doing here? It's going to be pretty depressing pretty quickly if our life does not have happiness and pleasure. Again, our brains are a miracle of God, and God made us with this neurotransmitter, this hormone called dopamine. It is kind of the pleasure center of our brain, and when it's released in our brain, that's when we're feeling those good feelings. We feel pleasure, we feel happy, we feel content, and it's part of our brain chemistry. It's how we're designed, it's how we're made, and amazingly, there are ways that you can pursue the release of dopamine in your brain. Um, really bad ways and some really good ways. So we're gonna talk about that. Some of the positive and the negative ways that you can get a dopamine hit. Now, dopamine is a powerful neurotransmitter, and it can create pathways in your brain again that are really positive and some really negative. It really is kind of like it has the same effects as some narcotics do in your brain. The crack cocaine, morphine. It has that same ending, that INE ending as morphine. Heroin has that same root at the end there. So it's very similar effect as those drugs, but it's a healthy way of getting the same kind of pleasures that you could get if you were taking those narcotic type drugs that are not healthy ways to release that drug or that dopamine in your brain. So positive ways that we can release that dopamine in our brain can lead to overall health and wellness in our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. Negative ways, not good. They can lead to addiction, they often do, to isolation, to destruction, and just absolute despair. You might think I'm being overly dramatic there. I'm not. That is just the true reality. If you let these negative coping mechanisms and these negative ways of getting that dopamine hit become prevalent in your life, these negative consequences will happen. They will. You will experience addiction in your life. You will become isolated from people. You will have these destructive patterns in your life, and ultimately, you'll be miserable, just utterly miserable. So don't go there. We're going to talk about some of those specifics here. So what are some of the bad ways that you can seek after dopamine in your life? All of these are addictive, and there are different forms of addiction. The obvious ones are those drugs, narcotics, alcohol, smoking, vaping. Why do people do those things? Because it makes you feel good. It does release that dopamine in your brain that gives you that good feeling, those happy, pleasurable feelings. But they're not healthy. They're so bad for those brain pathways in your mind. They're addictive and they're physically destructive. If those are something that you're struggling with, those are hard things to get over, those addictions. But we're going to talk about some of the positive ways in a bit here of finding ways to get that same dopamine hit in positive ways that will lead to health and thriving in your life. Poor diet. Why do we like junk food? Well, because it makes us feel good. It releases that same dopamine in our brain, but it does so in negative and destructive ways. So processed foods that are high in sugar, fat, and salt, they are highly addictive and they're physically destructive. They lead to all sorts of really bad diseases, diabetes, heart disease, all sorts of those, cancer, okay? All cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all of those have been tied to poor diet, eaten over years and years and years. Those are avoidable in large part, not all the time. There's certainly genetic abnormalities and things that can cause those diseases that you have no control over. But in a lot of ways, we do have control over those diseases if you choose to live a really healthy, eat a really healthy diet. So those processed foods that are very prevalent in our society, those fast foods, we like those things. I like those things because they hit that dopamine receptor in our brain, and they release that powerful drug that makes us feel good, but it's temporary and it doesn't lead to overall health. Social media. Why do people get stuck hours and hours on social media? Because of dopamine. I'm telling you, your dopamine's released in your brain when you're on social media. It's designed that way. That's why these tech companies they want you to get that hit over and over and over again and stay there so you can get advertised and stay on their social media platform so they can make lots of money. It's all about greed and self promotion. But what does social media do? It's isolating. You're not going to be in right relationship with God and people when you're stuck in that social media spin and cycle. It's addicting. and it's an absolute black hole of your time. It just sucks your time away. It just it goes away to this great void and you can't get it back. And it's relationally destructive. You know, we call it social media, but how social is it really? You know, how much time are you actually spending talking to real people, um, and engaging in real relationships with God and people when you're on social media? I think if we're honest, it's not very much time. Most of it is just scrolling and viewing other people's lives that we don't know and we're not connected with. So please be careful there. I know it's addicting. I know it's hard to break free of that, but we're going to talk about some positive ways to do that soon here. Gambling. All of you are underage right now, but if you get into this in your life, I don't suggest you do at all. Don't even start. It releases that same chemical in your brain and it becomes addictive. It creates these pathways in your brain that you feed. It's addictive and it's financially devastating. Pornography. It is an epidemic in our country, in our world. It's a huge industry. It's insane how much people spend on this horrible practice. It's addictive. It's isolating. You're seeing unrealistic sexual practices, images and practices that are just not real. It warps your mind and your brain. It's objectifying to men and women, primarily women, and it's relationally destructive. And it releases that dopamine in really unhealthy ways. Don't go there. It's a struggle for men. It's a struggle for women more and more. Um, it's a super unhealthy aspect of our society, and I suspect that most of you watching this have experienced this to some extent. I highly encourage you to push against that and to try some of these healthy ways to release dopamine and get that pleasure fulfillment in your life. Unhealthy sex practices. Um, Unsafe. They're unsafe. They're addictive. They're physically and relationally destructive. If you're having sex with multiple partners or people that you're not in a committed relationship with, it can leave you emotionally scarred and wounded and can cause lots of problems. And people get addicted to this because sex releases dopamine. It feels good in your brain, in your body. That's why people want to do it. But there's a place for it, and talk about that a little bit here too. So avoid that. You're going to be in a world of hurt if that becomes your go-to source of dopamine release. So what about the good? What are some healthy ways um, to release dopamine in your brain and get that pleasure fix that we all want and we all need? Well, eat healthy. Protein, healthy proteins, fiber, fruits, vegetables, non-processed food. You're gonna get that same dopamine release, but in a healthy way that's sustainable, that leads to overall health, long-term health in your body. Sleep can release dopamine. When you're tired and worn out, you need sleep, and it makes you feel better. Take a nap when you need to. Regular exercise is like free therapy. It's like free, depression medication. It you get that endorphin release, that morphine, dopamine release in your body when you exercise. And when you're sitting down and you're feeling stressed and you just want to curl up in a ball and die, you don't feel like exercising. But if you just create a habit in your life to get up, to get out and start moving, it will pay huge dividends in your life and create some positive cycles of dopamine release. Spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, these are things that can bring pleasure and also release that dopamine in healthy ways. Engagement with people in your community, friends, family, those corporate spiritual practices. Again, these are things when you're hanging out with friends, you feel good, and it's that pleasure center in your brain is released in positive ways. Listening to music, another great way to seek out that dopamine hit. Participating in hobbies. sports, art, music, crafts, whatever things that you like to do in your spare time that's not related to technology and screens. Those are great ways to seek out that pleasure need in your brain. Laughing, humor. And I'll talk about it. You guys are not there yet, but one day, when you're in a place in life to pursue marriage, that is the place for healthy sexual practices. And again, sex does release dopamine. It does bring pleasure to your brain and to your body, but it will be destructive if it's outside of a lifelong committed relationship. And in our society, and in our world, and in our religious practices, we call that lifelong committed relationship marriage. That is where sex belongs. I'm not going to apologize about saying that. It is true, and you will find great satisfaction and enjoyment if you keep it there. Please do. Depression. Sometimes we try all the things that are bringing us, those healthy habits, and we're still feeling those persistent feelings of depression, anxiety, fear, despair. And despite all our efforts and pursuing those healthy stress management tools, we're still feeling that way. And if you're feeling that way, you need to get help right away. Tell somebody, tell many people. Don't just tell one person. They might not be someone who knows what to do. Tell friends, tell parents, tell a school counselor, tell a therapist if you have one, tell your doctor. Um, the stigma of depression and mental health is lessening, and so I think it's a lot easier for people to do this. But you really need to get help and tell people. Don't be depression is isolating, and you don't want to stay there. You need to tell someone to get help. You may need a little help with medicine to kind of correct and reorient your brain. You may have gotten your brain into some really unhealthy pathways, and medicine can help correct those chemical imbalances. But I gotta say, those same chemical restructuring can be done by all those healthy dopamine release practices that I just went through. So medicine might be a short-term thing. It could be long-term, but if you put those healthy practices in your life, it really does go far in avoiding this kind of situation when you're feeling depressed. If you have those healthy habits in your life, it's really going to be rare to experience this long-term depression or anxiety. Suicidal thoughts are a normal thing to experience for people who are going through depression. But suicide is, of course, it's not the answer. It's a long-term solution to a temporary problem. You can't go back from it, of course. And so, if you're feeling that way, get help right away. Tell a trusted adult. Tell a parent. Tell the same list of people that I listed for when you're struggling with depression. There's a suicide helpline now in our country, 988. It's just like 911, but for mental health issues. So get help. Do not mess around with that. If you're feeling that way, if you're thinking that way, tell someone and get the help that you need. All right, so this week, for your attendance purposes, attendance check-in, you're going to answer this discussion question. It's in Moodle under week 12. It could be a different week if it's a different semester, but should be under week 12. And this is the question. Discuss how you deal with stress in your life. Do you struggle with any of the negative, addictive approaches to stress management that I just went through? And let me say this, if you're a human being, a normal human being, you do. We all do. We all struggle with those addictive pulls on our life, addiction, and going to other sources of fulfillment aside from healthy relationships with God and people is just part of our human nature. And so you will have some of those addictive habits in your life, but you need to deal with them in healthy ways and push against those. So what are some of those areas that you struggle with? You don't have to share details, but is that something you do struggle with? And what are some of those healthy strategies? Which healthy strategies mentioned that I just shared can you implement more to manage stress and increase joy and fulfillment in your life? So answer that with a few sentences, a short paragraph, to check in this week for attendance. All right, so what's coming up? Next week, we will have a normal live class. It is the last class before finals week, so it's important that you attend. We're going to be going over chapter 13. That is your homework for this week, to read through chapter 13, do the Smart Book activity, and the chapter 13 quiz. Please check in Moodle to make sure that you've turned in these syllabus assignments, these big point assignments, the focus 2 assessment. You're going to submit that under week 4. And the academic plan assignment, you're going to submit that under week 10. If you haven't done that, please make sure you submit those. You can still do so for full credit. And of course, coming up, we have the career research paper, which is due week 12, and also the oral presentation. Those due dates might not be accurate for your class or your semester, but those are coming up due in week 12. All right, if you have questions or issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and email me, and I can help if needed. Have a great week, everyone.